Allow me to tell you something about horror. You seem to think that horror is a monster with fangs, wings, horns and claws that preys on the innocent. You seem to think that horror is a host of small children going missing from a small suburban community and the law enforcement just not caring or noticing. You seem to think that horror could somehow be contextualized in a plague of bugs that scurries across the surface of the planet that can't be stopped, that burrow under the skin, that eat your insides. You think that horror could be an alien that takes over our forms. You seem to believe that horror could be the undead, zombies, ghouls, vampires, praying until the apocalypse. Horror is the mundane. Horror is you and me, and the lengths that we will go to satiate our needs, no matter how vile. Horror comes in many forms, but horror is at its peak when it preys on the unwitting, when the perpetrator blends into his surroundings, when a regular man can just don a mask and stalk the night, can break in through a downstairs window and kill that beautiful girlfriend of yours laying in the bed next to you without you waking. A silent slice across the neck, the planting of your DNA on the corpse of the girl, arranging her body in such a way as to leave no doubt that you have ravaged her, leaving only evidence of your passing. And when you wake and you find that you are in a pool of now cool, sticky blood, and beside you is the limp, lifeless figure of the female that you once loved, and you realize that there is only one possible suspect, and it is you, no one will believe your innocence. No one. It is horror when they put you in clasps, take you to the jail. It is horror when you are taken to court and all the evidence is stacked up against you. It is horror when you get sent to the asylum and are put in the padded cell. It is horror when you find that the man treating you knows more about the crime than even the corpse discussed. When you find that your doctor, the only man you have to speak to, is the killer who put you there. In the dead of night, as you scream into the walls and no one can hear you, you will know what horror is. Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Gaming. Now to get this off. And now for my next trick, a striptease. Yes, quite not customary for this channel to wear masks or indeed take my clothes off for your viewing pleasure. Still, I'm sure there's an audience for that somewhere. So it would be my Dr. Decker mask from Nightbreed. Clive Barker film. Much maligned and underrated. The Redux is fantastic. Redux. Oh, I look positively relaxed.
Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Gaming and a review of Dead of Night. Very difficult to gauge times and how long that intro would have lasted, given that I could hardly see a thing, but I hope it was worth its while. The Dead of Night is a horror role-playing game by SteamPower Publishing and Cubicle 7. This is the second edition of the game, and it isn't a long one by any stretch. It's about 180 pages in length, and as a preface, I would say that The Dead of Night is among the finest of introductory horror role-playing games for GMs and players both who have never played in a horror genre role-playing game before. It is not bogged down by meta plot. It is not at all necessary for you to own any other games or source books. This is a perfectly good starting RPG, and it serves its genre very well indeed. Now, to actually get on to the meat and bone of the book, we start with Chapter 1, as is customary, in which it tells us the basic layout of the rules. Namely, you have a number of attributes that are split between identify/obscure, persuade/dissuade, pursue/escape, and assault/protect. Now, between each of those four categories you get 10 points. Not 2, but 10 points. Damn it, I can't hold all my fingers up. And you decide, for instance, if you want 7 in assault and 3 in protect, or if you want 5 in pursue and another 5 in escape, and so on. You split your 10 between each of those. You can then assign specializations, so for instance you may decide that you want a specialization of wrestling in assault, and so you put your assault up to 9, only for the purposes of wrestling, but must then reduce 2 points from assault or protect, or 1 from assault and 1 from protect, meaning you get an ultra specialisation in one field but cripple yourself in others. That is the basic character creation of this game. You assign yourself a bad habit as well, and you assign yourself a typical 5 survival points that can be used for the typical luck point, fate point style things, re-rolls to announce that didn't happen and basically rewrite a scene that the GM has just played out. And if you play your bad habit appropriately, you can recover your survival points. The game itself is very simple in that regard. And as soon as your survival points have run out, and they basically count as hit points, drama, and insanity points, once you have ran out of all of them, your character is dead. So 5 isn't many, but this isn't a game that's necessarily suited to long chronicles, which we'll get into. How to actually play the game. So you've created your character, you've assigned him the bad habit of chain smoker, for instance, as an easy one. You have given him something interesting like an identify of 6, an obscure of 4. He's very truthful, he's quite perceptive, and not terribly good at lying about anything. His pursue is 8. He's a star on the track team, but his hide is 2. Maybe he just he never feels like hiding. He's full of bravado. Sorry, his escape, not hide. His persuade is 3 and his dissuade is 7. He's not terribly charismatic, but he can win an argument or talk someone out of doing things. Maybe he's quite a responsible person. And his assault is going to be 5 and his protect is going to be 5 as well. I give him the specialisation of sprint on his pursue, which I can only put up to a maximum of 10, but I'm going to reduce 1 from his pursue and 1 from his escape in order to do that. And this chain-smoking sprinter is pretty much rounded out. Now, let's say that the chain-smoking sprinter gets into a fight with, I don't know, a vampire, let's say. And so he tries to lay a punch or a drop kick on the vampire, and I have my assault of 5, I also roll 1d10, and I need to add the result, sorry, 2d10, and I need to add the result to the stats that I've got. 15 is the typical target number, but if I'm rolling against someone else, I'm rolling against their overall 2d10 plus attribute. And higher numbers are successes, lower numbers are failures. basically you need to exceed the figure that you're aiming for. The game itself, in that regard, is again very, very simple. It's just 2d10 plus your stat versus a target number, typically 15, which may go up or down depending on the environmental hazards, the weaponry that your opponent may have, and so on. Now, to go further, we do of course also have tension. Tension is an excellent mechanic that is incorporated into this game that makes it feel like a horror movie. The tension, starting typically around 0 to 5, has an effect on the layers of description that the GM should be applying, how terrifying everything is, through to 15, which is the maximum. And as characters lose survival points during the course of the game, whether it's just due to bad luck or being injured or losing their minds, the tension points ascend towards the maximum of 15, which is Lovecraftian style horror. As the tension goes up, the difficulty also ratchets up. Therefore, it makes the game scarier for the players as well as for the characters. The difficulties of various tests will go up. The monsters may come back from the dead, that kind of thing. It's quite a nice little mechanic that needs to be managed by the GM, certainly. It's no good increasing the tension rapidly at the beginning, but I do happen to like the mechanic very well. The book, come chapter 4, has a monster creation chapter, and there's archetypes given, such as the unstoppable killer, the vengeful dead, the hunter, the beast within, the corrupter, the imposter, the puppet master, the horde, the formless horror, the thing from beyond, and so on. And each of those have their own little stats, but they also have their own special abilities, their own specializations, which make for quite interesting one-shots, I suppose. For instance, you could have a devourer, an alter ego. You could give a monster that gives its opponent no escape. Basically, it will always catch up to them. Implacable. Sequel. Sequel is one of my favourite ones. A slave to its masters, the monster cannot be slain, instead returning in a series of increasingly tenuous sequels. If the monster is reduced to 0 survival points and the tension is yet to hit 15, this specialisation may be triggered to bring the monster back to life on 1 survival point. There you go. Which, on the subject of sequels, is the way that this game styles itself, like a horror movie, like Friday the 13th, like Nightmare on Elm Street or Hellraiser or whatever, another horror series that has several sequels, Saw being a popular one of recent years. Rather than, let's say, having the same characters in every single game or having the same story in every single game, you can have the survivors carry over, or some of the survivors, and have the villain just keep coming back over and over again, or a variation on the theme, if you want to use the same sort of universe each time. Or you can just go completely off the rails and have a set of movies, games, that are in no way interconnected, but it allows you to explore the different horror genres with ease. The game does give advice for different types of horror genre, whether you're going for slashers, monsters, vampires, splatter, Asian horror, that kind of thing. It is, again, a worthy resource in that regard. Chapter 6 and 7, I believe, deal with essays. Basically, the writers of the game and authorities on horror give their ideas behind how to increase tension, how to deal with character death, how to introduce monsters appropriately, and they're interesting to read. I wouldn't actually say that they are an integral part of this book. In fact, I'd perhaps say they're the weakest and most unnecessary part, perhaps a bit of filler. Whereas the rules, I would say, are strong, the monstrous archetypes are excellent, and their specialisations lead to any number of sequels. The art, which we'll get onto in a minute, is brilliant. And all in all, it's a concise, simple game. I'd say that this chapter 6 actually, is the one that lacks much of a point. But I can see how it would be helpful to a new GM, new to the horror genre, wanting to get an insight from someone else who has ran a game in that genre before. There are several scenarios at the back of the book as well in Chapter 7, and that is where it deals with, let's say, lots of posters that appear within the course of the book, and that's what I'm going to show you finally. This is my overall highlights in Dead of Night, and perhaps the best reason for buying it completely. If there was an art book of Dead of Night, then I would get it, because this is... it's just fantastic. There's no traditional art that you'd find in an RPG. Rather, you have posters, movie posters, with a title, a tagline, credits, and you do what you can with it. So, The Chamber, Some Things Are Worse Than Death. Brian Headland presents a film by Stephen Vincent, etc. And there's some absolutely brilliant ones here. All Teeth. Not the same as the vaginal horror movie, Teeth. We've got posters. I'm trying to find some of my favourite ones. Hide. Just got lots of photos with their eyes scratched out. And yeah, Path Lab. There is our typical Asian horror appearance, and I'm not going to show you all of these things because, of course, it's part of the product. I do love that poster though. Symbiote. They're positively Garth Marenghi. If you've ever looked up garthmarenghi.com, if you've never looked up garthmarenghi.com or watched Dark Place, then I recommend that you do. Now, in conclusion, because that is it, Dead of Night is a complete game. It has several scenarios, as I say, based on the posters that are scattered throughout the book. The rules themselves are remarkably simple, and this game does have everything that a new GM needs. Does it have anything that I require, I suppose? And that's where I would say the book is at its weakest. As someone who is, I suppose, more well-versed in horror, then I gravitate towards a specific game like Kuro or Vampire, indeed, or Hunter. But as something that you can use to pick up and play, whether it's a one-off, and you don't even need to actually come up with a plot in advance. There's advice in here for running a game without having done so. This is a game that you can use to just pick up and play, perfect for conventions and running games of any subgenre of horror. Then, yeah, I would say there aren't many games that are as good and do the same thing as Dead of Night. And I can't really give it much of a better recommendation than that. It's very good for the price too. So yeah, do check it out. If you're after a horror game that is reasonably priced, that contains everything you need to run a horror game, then go for it. I've certainly played a couple of good games of it. One involving a zombie apocalypse, one involving an alien invasion, very faculty-based. Yeah, do give it a look. Thank you very much for watching.